Okay, so last night I binge watched the first three episodes of season 4 of The Boys. And I haven't really talked much about this show because although I like it, I really don't have much to add to it. At times I find the show honestly kind of repulsive. It seems to be just edgy for the sake of edgy. Sometimes I enjoy those aspects. Other times, like I said, I find it repulsive. And everyone who says you should read the comic book, it's even worse. Well, no, that's why I won't be reading the comic book. But I do like the show, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. So this isn't going to be me dumping on the show. So they introduced two new characters, Firecracker, at least two new soup characters, Firecracker and Sister Sage. And I'm going to really have to fight the urge not to say Sister Sledge, by the way. And with Sister Sage, they have introduced probably my favorite character into this show. So before I get into why that is, let's just kind of look at what The Boys is. I'm going to assume that if you're watching this video, you're familiar with the show, but I'm not going to spoil it. Or at least I'm not going to spoil those three episodes or the show. I will, I guess, kind of maybe spoil the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the first episode of season 4, which isn't going to be really spoiling anything. So watch the video. I'm not going to mess anything up for you. But well, let's talk about comic books just real quick. So go to different comic book publishers, Marvel, DC, Image Comics, Dark Horse. And there's certain themes that you'll see in the comic book, certain character tropes. You'll have the speedsters, the Flash, Quicksilver. You'll have the characters that can control fire or can produce fire with their bodies. Even within the same publisher, Johnny Storm. I just went blank there. Fantastic Four, Pyro, X-Men. I don't know. Need to go through all of these. Can be underwater for long periods of time. Aquaman, Namor. You guys get the idea. Well, in The Boys, we kind of have the proxy of these characters, but it's almost parody. It's a deconstruction of these characters. Because as they're presented in the comic books as often being noble and heroic, in this show, they're not. They go beyond flawed. In fact, they seem to be kind of terrible people. And their terrible nature may be actually linked to them having these powers, never being held accountable. But one character that we haven't really encountered in The Boys yet is the character who has the superhuman intelligence. And this is a thing that comes up in comic books. Sometimes you'll have a character who that is their ability. Ozymandias from The Watchmen, Lex Luthor, or maybe just an additional ability. Batman is one of the smartest human beings on the planet. Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, his greatest superpower really isn't the stretchy thing, it's the fact that he's the smartest human in the Marvel Universe. The Boys haven't really explored this, though. In fact, most of the characters in The Boys seem kind of dumb. Like, really dumb. Even the smart ones are dumb. It's one of the things that frustrates me about this show is how bad the decisions that the people make in this show. But you can kind of link a lot of that to just the people who are traumatized and just damaged. And even if they're not dumb, that affects their actions. But we're finally introduced to a character who their power, and it seems that maybe their only power, is superhuman intelligence. So, but when we're introduced to this person with superhuman intelligence, of course I'm talking about Sage or Sister Sage, we find her in this kind of dingy apartment with books laying around, and actually we're introduced to her, she's sitting on the toilet listening to an audiobook, albeit it is a audiobook of philosophy. It's an audiobook. Not exactly what you would think the smartest person on the planet would be doing with their ability. So what we have here is the intersection of things. Because even though she's the smartest human person, whatever, on the planet, she's been greatly rejected. And I think there's two things going on here for two reasons. It's because she's a woman, and it's because she's a black woman. And because of this, she's a misanthrope. She's kind of angry. And I think there's definitely something being said there. There's definitely something being said there. And there is an irony that the only person who seems to be seeing her potential is the poster boy of white entitlement, and that is Homelander. So we come across that idea of we have this black woman who, although she is the smartest person on the planet, no one really wants to have anything to do with her. And in fact, that she was part of a superhero team, she was kicked off of it. And in fact, even when people come to her, they say, "You're the smartest woman on the planet." And she says, "No, no qualifier needed. I am the smartest person on the planet." So I think there's a lot of things they can do with this character. Now, one thing I want to talk about before I end this video is what I would say acceptable powers. So think about this. What if Homelander were black? Because when the people in this show, and if you haven't watched the show, these people are created in a lab. It's a drug. But when you're given the drug, you really don't know what's going to happen. Some people are blessed with, cool powers, speed, super strength, and it doesn't really do much to them. But other people, it has some god-awful results, right? So it could very well be the case that there are other black soups in this show, like A-Train. But what if they gave this chemical, it's called Compound V, by the way, to a black child, and they became Homelander instead of Homelander becoming Homelander, or as we find out his name is John? Would the world be able to accept a black Superman? Because it seems like the world isn't able to accept the smartest person on the planet being a black woman. And honestly, I don't know if they'd be able to accept the smartest person on the planet being black, or society would be able to accept the smartest person on the planet being a woman. And definitely when you combine those, black and woman, that's not going to happen. So they don't all out reject her, and they're not threatened by her, but they do reject her, but they're not threatened by her, at least not and they are threatened by her, but not in a reaction of physical violence, but just ignoring. But going back to this whole thing of who can we accept? Now, like I said, we have this thing in comic books, the character of a Superman type character, right? I mean, even DC, in addition to their Superman, they also have the Martian Manhunter, and they have Shazam, who kind of has similar powers to Superman. But even in Marvel, you have a number of characters who are basically kind of Superman proxies. The Sentry is probably, or Sentry, I think it's the Sentry, I don't know. He's probably the most well-known Marvel Superman, but you also have Hyperion. But you also have a character known as Blue Marvel. Now, the thing about Blue Marvel is that he discovers he has these powers and starts working as a superhero. And America loves him, right? As soon as he has these powers, he puts on a suit, put on a mask, and starts saving the world, right? Now, notice that he puts on a mask. Now, the previous characters I mentioned, Superman, Sentry, Hyperion, even the Martian Manhunter, who is a green alien, they don't wear masks. So why does Blue Marvel wear a mask? Well, we find out why when he's fighting one of his enemies and his mask gets ripped, and then the world finds out that he is black. And they are immediately angry. And the government comes to him and says, "Can you please retire? America doesn't want to have a black superhero." So they give him a Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he goes off to the moon. Or maybe it's Mars, I can't remember. Because America couldn't accept a black Superman. They find it frightening, they find it distasteful, and they didn't like it. So there's something to be said about that. In addition, the thing to be said that even if we have a black superhero, they always have to be kind of confined to their, maybe not confined, but say they have to have that qualifier of being black. We have Black Panther, we have Black Vulcan. And if they're not black, if there's some other racial minority, there's Apache Chief, right? They can't just be a superhero. They can't just be a person in their own right. They have to be constantly reminded that no, you're black, you're a minority, you're indigenous, you're something, but you can't just be a superhero. You just can't be a person. So even with Sister Sage, she couldn't just be Sage. She had to be Sister Sage. There had to be the constant reminder of you're black. Maybe it made her possibly, or maybe they were thinking that could potentially make it a little bit more palatable for society, but it still wasn't enough. So, and I also kind of wonder that within these superpowers, can we accept certain people having certain powers? The other black superhero that we see the most of is A-Train, and his ability is super speed. And we see that A-Train can actually be pretty dangerous. Matter of fact, and I said I wouldn't spoil anything, so I won't, but the first episode, you right away see how dangerous A-Train can be. But maybe the idea of the fastest man in the world being black, maybe that's acceptable. Anyway, I think that there's a lot of potential they can do with this character.